Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together. Well, hello, Decoders. I wanted to just pop on quick and share with you that this episode of Dental Decoders podcast is proudly sponsored by Transformational Dental Coaching. Are you ready to take your practice to the next level? Because for the next 5 episodes, we're excited to partner with Transformational Dental Coaching, founded by the amazing Rebecca Herring. Rebecca brings over 15 years of experience in the dental industry, transforming practices and empowering teams to reach their full potential. Whether it's team building, optimizing operations, reducing costs with virtual assistants, you name it, Rebecca's experience covers it all. Why choose Transformational Dental Coaching? For one, to grow your practice, build a dream team and cut costs with virtual assistants. 2, unlock your team's full potential, enhance teamwork, communication, and patient care. And 3, boost efficiency. Identify and eliminate inefficiencies, allowing your team to focus on exceptional patient experience. We also have an exclusive offer for all of our listeners. Transformational Dental Coaching is offering our audiences a free consultation call. So don't miss the opportunity to elevate your practice and drive success. Check out their website, which will be linked in the show notes, but it is yourtdcoach.com, and schedule your free call today. Rebecca, and welcome to the show. Always fun to have you here.
Always enjoy being with you, Brittany.
Oh, thank you. So, Rebecca, we all know and love you, but in case there's a new listener joining us today, why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Happy to be here and always love doing the podcast together with you, Brittany. I have been in dentistry for quite a while. My dad was a dentist, and so, of course, dentistry was in our background from the day I was born. And so I really enjoy serving and helping others, finding new ways to find operationally a way for our practices to function better, run more smoothly, and sometimes that means thinking outside the box a little bit. So I started my coaching business, Transformational Dental Coaching, a little while ago, and a piece that I found that I could really help my practices with was sometimes the shortage of staffing, and that required us to think outside the box a little bit with remote team members. So the last practice I was in, they really struggled with finding reliable and dedicated team members, which I think some of our listeners probably struggle with too. And so this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, so we decided to try working with virtual or remote team members. And it was very successful in our practice. We ended up getting rid of all of our front office teams in all of our locations. Not necessarily for everybody, but it really worked for our patients. And so that's kind of what drives me today in helping practices operationally and with their virtual team members.
So virtual assistants, which confuses people sometimes in dentistry. So we're not talking about like dental assistants. We're talking just like virtual team members. But VAs have become like a buzzword, or there's like a lot of hype surrounding VAs nowadays. It's become super popular. People in dentistry are starting to slowly come around to this idea that's been in other industries for quite some time. So for dentists or dental professionals in general, or really any business, what's the hype about VAs? What is the benefit of using a VA inside a practice?
I think that the biggest benefit to utilizing the virtual or remote team members in any business is that they really can be your most loyal and dedicated team member. Even though they may be offshore or in another country, they are very dedicated, they're very loyal, and they are out there to do everything they can to see your business be very successful. This stems, like you said, outside of dentistry. I've seen this in salons. I've worked with businesses in like insurance, like life insurance, car insurance, those types of things where it's a lot of repetitive work. It's a lot of busy work, and they end up being like executive assistants essentially to someone in a business. They are able to help your business by coming in and helping you to be very streamlined in what you're doing and very efficient. They don't have any distractions. Unlike those of us that are working in an office, there's a lot of things happening in the practice. And so they're in essentially their own little cubicle. And so they just go, and they know that they have an 8 or a 10-hour day for you, and they just go, and they want to do as much as they can for you, and they are dedicated to get it done, and they really want to make you happy. So I think that's the most important thing, is that they really are there to be what I call your secret weapon, because they really can get in there and get it done for you and help you and your team be more efficient within the practice. It also allows your team members that are in the office to do what they need to do with the patient that's standing right there in front of you.
That's awesome. I imagine that this is intriguing to our listeners who have maybe been playing around with the idea of adding in a VA. So when you're in a dental practice, it's pretty straightforward. You know when you need to add an associate. You know when you need to add an assistant. You know when you need to add front desk or hygiene, because you can look at your schedule and piece those things together. So how do you know when it's the right time to add a VA into your practice, which may be a little bit more obscure than knowing when it's time to add an associate?
Great question. And I get asked this quite often. So for practices, you're right. Sometimes it's not as obvious, but sometimes it's a matter of, I need someone to just help me answer my phones. They're going crazy all day, and the front office staff just can't choose between, do I answer the phone first, or do I take care of the patient that's standing right in front of me? And sometimes people ask, what's the best protocol for that, right? Who's more important? Honestly, they're both important. The patient that's standing in front of you, right? They need to be taken care of. They've just walked in your practice and they're probably trying to check in for their appointment. Well, the patient on the phone could potentially be a new patient that's calling your practice, and you don't want to lose the marketing that you've put in to bring in those new patients. So they're both important. So don't lose either. This is where a virtual team member for a simple task is just answering your phones and helping get your patients scheduled can be very simple. They can go from answering your phones to helping to schedule, to confirming your appointments, helping to reschedule patients when they call, checking lab cases. Are our lab cases here? Calling labs, things like that are simple tasks in the sense of just interacting with patients, to sending your claims. They can do the full RCM process for you, your revenue cycle management. They can process your claims. They can verify your insurance for you, and they can process the claims, do the attachments, all of those sorts of things for you, send the claims, follow up, pretty much almost anything that can be done at the front desk, one of your virtual team members can do for you. So it's a matter of talking to your staff and your team and seeing where they need to maybe alleviate a list of responsibilities from your front office team members. I know that a lot of practices say, man, I wish that I had a second, maybe insurance person, and I really need help with my phones. Well, you could hire one person to do both of those, and it can be a little costly in the United States. A virtual assistant is going to run you about $8 to $10 an hour, and they'll work 40 hours for you. So I think you have to look at the entire process and system that you have at your front desk and determine from your team that's there, what are the things that we can offload and give to our back office secret weapon to help us facilitate our streamlining to our practice, to make us more efficient. And what do we have to keep in the practice to the team that's in the practice in front of our patients? That's probably the first thing I always tell a practice is make a list. Make a list of the things that you feel like is something we could give to a remote team member to do for our practice. and what things do we have to keep in the practice to keep us moving smoothly and moving forward. One thing I think that practices, I think, would love to have someone do for them all the time would be to reach back out to patients that haven't been in for a while, get them scheduled for their recall. What about your new patients that you just saw 3 or 4 months ago? They never came back for treatment. Let's reach out to them and say to your patient, hey, John, Dr. ABC saw you, a couple months ago. So glad we were able to welcome you to our practice. We really hope you had a great experience when you were in our office. We noticed that we weren't able to get started on the fillings that doctor recommended for you. Doctor asked me to reach out and see if we could get that scheduled for you. We'd really like to see you keep up with your oral care, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. That all takes time, but it also speaks very loudly to your patients that you truly care about them. Who has time to do this in your practice?
Right.
When you're running around and you are, trying to take care of the patients and present treatment plans and check them out, and you have a patient, all these things are happening, and it's all happening at, warp speed. Well, your VAs are sitting in their quiet cubicle and they have a few minutes and they can dedicate it to your patients to reach out and make them feel like they are your star patient. You're their VIP patients, and whatever you want to label that experience for the patients in your practice. You want to give them the gold standard of care. You want them to feel like the doctor really cares about them. So looking at some of those experiences in the practice and what they can actually do to offer some of those experiences for them is really what we want to offer, and really what those virtual team members can do that can be very beneficial, but we just don't always have time for.
We've talked about this pretty at length here, but I worked with VAs as well in the practice back in the day when I was in the practice. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we did when we decided if we were going to bring people on or not is we made a list of all the things we wish we could do if people wasn't a problem. Then we took a list of all the things we're already doing that everybody hates to do. And we delegated the things that everybody didn't like to do. And we rearranged the duties to accommodate the things we wish we could. So I love that you mentioned all the out-of-the-box ways that we could use this VA too, and things that we're not doing in the practice yet, but that we wish we could do, or that would set us apart from the 9 other dentists on our street. So that was super creative. I like that.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, how would you feel if you got a call and you hadn't been back to the dentist, no matter what the reason was, right? And someone reached out to you and just said, man, the doctor really cares about you and he wants to know if we can get you back in. I'd be like, dang, he knows I'm not coming.
Uh-huh. They're thinking about me.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, and boutique dentists have been doing things like that for a while now with like the new patient concierge follow-up calls and those types of things. And there's no reason that your general practice, your PPO practice can't provide those services too, even when on a budget with the help of a VA.
Right, absolutely. And I know that we have a lot of platforms that help us accommodate those things and get them done for us, but they're in a text message, which is fine too. Some people and some patients, probably a lot of us, would say, yep, doing great, thanks so much, and move on. And that's okay too. But when a patient is a new patient, they only came in one time and they haven't been back, we want them to feel like they've got something extra special from us and makes them feel like they want to come back. And that's, like you said, that boutique service. I think another great option that I've seen other practices, especially specialty practices, oral surgery, endo practices, those types of things that have utilized the virtual team members for is for after hours phone calls. Because, the patients sometimes will call, the office is closed, and there isn't anyone to just help answer some of those basic questions. I'm still in pain tonight. I have a little bit of swelling. What should I do? And they aren't necessarily calls that the doctor needs to answer. They just need to put the patient's mind at ease that everything's okay. So these virtual team members are a lot of times on different hours, daylight hours, than we are in the United States. And so by allowing them to have a virtual assistant that can work and serve their practice even during the daylight hours, but then stay a little bit later into the evening after the practice is closed to give that service to the patients, to allow them to know, hey, we do have someone in our practice until 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. to help alleviate any questions or concerns that you may have. And they can reach out to the doctor if there's something of urgent matter. Hey, we have patient, A on the phone, and they're still bleeding tonight. What would you like us to advise them of? If it's something that's serious, if it's just, I'm still hurting, is that normal? We have the standard responses we can give the patients, but we don't have to necessarily have the doctor interrupted 4, 5, 6, 7 times, every night, every single day. And that's something that I think some of the practices have also utilized with their virtual assistant.
So virtual assistants, you've mentioned, are commonly based offshore. So how does that work, especially like with bringing a team member onto your staff and they're joining you with all the payroll and logistics and things? How does that all work when you're adding a VA into your team?
Great question. So the VA is coming from a company that takes care of paying the virtual assistant. They also support them with everything that they need in order to work for the practice. So all of the technical computers and noise canceling headphones and any of the platforms that the dentist may use. And they also train them on the PMS system that the dentist will be using, which is fantastic. So the only thing, honestly, that the office, the dental practice, has to worry about is having a way for them to remote into their system, Splash Top, whatever option that they want to use, and they just pay the company. So in some ways, this is very beneficial for a practice. They don't have the responsibility of the taxes or unemployment or offering the benefits that they have in the practice. Those are covered by the business in which you hire the virtual assistants from. So in that way, it is very nice. And generally it's a set fee. And like I mentioned, I think earlier, it runs about $8 to $10 an hour. So when you think about it from a business standpoint, you can hire generally 2 virtual assistants for the price of 1 in the United States. So when you're thinking about some of those, like you mentioned, some of those tasks that is your wish list, right? We wish that these are all the things that we could get done in our office. And here's a list of all the things that are just so mundane that we just don't really want to do. You could take those and you literally could have in your practice 2 people that are accomplishing all the things on your wish list and the mundane tasks that you don't want to do. But they could also be, the ones that verify all your insurance. So when you're talking about, we really want to make sure that whoever's verifying our insurance, they do it the way that we want it done. That is how it can be done with a virtual assistant. You've hired a team member. They are yours and they are part of your team. So if you want them to do it a certain way, you just train them to do it the way you want it done in your practice so it's consistent. I mean, there's just endless possibilities for your virtual team members as part of your team.
So we're getting ready to start to kind of wrap this episode. Before we do, I want to ask you a play on our signature question, since I've already had you answer the signature question. But what do you think is the secret code when it comes specifically to hiring a VA? Is it finding the right company? Is it finding the right VA specifically? What to you is the secret code when it comes to finding a VA?
Great question. And I will give you my decoder moment here. I think honestly, there are a lot of virtual assistant companies out there. You can interview and find the one that's right for you. There are some that, I don't think it matters necessarily what country they're pulling from. But for me, when I was deciding on the one I wanted to work with, a couple of years ago in the practice I was working in, it was important to find a company that knew what I was looking for and what was important to my practice and to the demographic of patients that we had. It was also important that I found a virtual assistant who had the kind of personality that meshed with our culture of our practice. And I also wanted to find a company that was taking the time to make sure that the virtual assistants that we hired 5 So it was important that they all meshed together, but it was important that they also understood the importance of and valued our relationship with our patients. We were very patient-centered. We always had very bubbly and happy team members at our front desk, but we valued also the culture. And so there's so many companies, like I said, so many great ones. What you have to just do is make sure you vet the one that you feel will have the team members that you want to work with. The company that I enjoy working with the most, and of course, like I said, feel free to call as many as you want till you find the one that you enjoy working with. For me, I love working with the company Reach. They work with VAs. They have a 4-year college education based in the United States. And they do an amazing job training their virtual assistants to be well-versed in everything for the PMS system in which the office that they'll be working in. And they do a great job in that follow-through after they've been placed to make sure that the experience is going well and they have a good placement experience and the team is enjoying the experience with their VA. And I think all of that makes for a successful virtual team member placement and experience.
Rebecca, this has been so insightful. I cannot wait to do part 2 with you, where we can talk about how to actually integrate that new team member. So if you're listening, stick around for part 2. It's going to be great. Rebecca, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. This has been awesome.
So welcome. Love it. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.